Hey, good morning, folks. Now, I had hoped to finish up everything inside the fuselage of the Gotha bomber, but I'm still waiting for that grab bag or grab box of watch parts. And the last time I checked on USPS Informed Delivery, it was on a slow bus making every stop between Pennsylvania and Oregon. I think it's somewhere in Montana now. I'm no longer in Montana. Baffles me as to why that's being routed that way, but I have to wait. So it's time to start doing the prep work, at least the prep work, for all of the rigging that's going to go on this build. Now, the original box, or the original kit, was it 56 or 58? I forget which one. I've got the original issue. Beautiful, nice box art. But my poor old eyes aren't going to suffice to use that as my guide, and the instructions that came with this box were pretty much hopeless. The reissued box from 1976, actually, as far as being able to do the rigging on the wings and around the engine nacelles, is really good. When I look at it closely, what I'm seeing here is that the builder used metal wire, and I'll get back to that in a moment. But it's certainly neat and tidy, and I can make out all of the connections or attachments between the wings and with the nacelles. It doesn't have certain lines from the front near the nose back to the wings, and I'll get to that in a moment too. So there is that, and this looks to me like it was the builder rigged it again with flat metal wire. Now, the instructions that came with the 76 reissue kit to doing the wings, there's another place where it shows the the fuselage control lines, but very clear. I can make those out. Looks like single lines that were used, at least in this diagram. That may or may not be the case. I did one more check of instructions, and I printed out the instructions for the Gotha 4 from Wing Not Wings. Very detailed, but boy, printing them out with an inkjet printer on plain paper, not having the glossy, higher quality actual instructions or manual. I can use this a little bit. There are those lines that go from the side of the fuselage back to the front, lower wings, by the way. But these can be, even with a front view and a back view, this stuff can be a little bit confounding. And I'm appreciative that I've got that showing, but I probably won't be using it much for the wings. I'll probably be using this as my guide, at least for wing and nacelle rigging. But what material do I use? Well, that's the next step. Well, I've already ruled out using this. Probably could tell that from my previous comments. So no on the easy flexible line. Now here is the generic flat wire, photo etched flat wire for rigging. And this is 1/48 scale. And if you want something a bit finer, you can also use 1/72 scale. I've got enough of this stuff to do the Gotha bomber. Or I can go forward with what I consider to be really high quality flexible line. This expensive stuff from Model Kasten. It's 0.13 millimeters in diameter. Unlike Easy Line, it's round. It doesn't flex as much. That means it doesn't wiggle as much. It's a really good looking line. So fortunately, I actually don't have to make up my mind between either using this or using the flat wire right at this moment while I do a whole bunch of what I'll call rigging prep. And that's what comes next. Okay, here's a 1/48 scale SE5A from Edward, the Profi pack. And I rigged this and built this kit maybe 4 years ago. I used Easy Line. And frankly, looking back, I'm surprised that it actually turned out pretty well, but maybe my hands were steadier and my patience was far better back in those days. I have ranted about Easy Line for the past year, so as much as in fact, I use this on a lot of my 1/48 bills, but I'm not going back to Easy Line. There is always that option. Now here is a 1/72 scale kit from Revell that I built about a year later, so maybe about 3 years ago. And I had the good fortune that there's a company, SBS Models, that does flat wire rigging, and they actually had a bespoke kit for SE5As in 1/72 scale. So one of the drawbacks with flat wire, there are some, is all of the snipping and sizing and potentially then bending the piece of wire that you've got to deal with if you have to cut the pieces yourself from a generic kit. Didn't have to do that in this case because all of these fit perfectly well, and they even had the double line pieces which are there. So this actually worked out well, and even though it was a pretty small model, I found it very easy to rig. However, an SE5A in 1/72 scale is diminutive, and much less complex than doing the Gotha bomber. So, what am I going to use? Okay, I drilled all the holes for the rigging line on the lower surface of the upper wing. And I have not drilled those holes all the way through because I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to use model cast and flexible line or the flat wire. If it's the flat wire, definitely no further drilling of those holes. With the model cast and line, I've got two options. I can drill the hole all the way through and then feed the line in from the top and secure it. That's going to be a relatively easy process as far as I can see, no reaching underneath, and then just bring it down and secure it on the other side through the bottom wing, the same process. But of course, then I'll have to fill the holes on the top of the upper wings and then give them a little touch-up of paint. I could just put the model cast and line in with CA glue and secure it that way into these various holes next to the struts. You know, the disadvantage of just doing that is while I won't have to do any repair on the top side, I will have to make sure that I keep all of those dangling lines out of the way when I attach the top wing. It's not something you want to be fiddling with and putting in after the top wing is secured, but then you've got to keep them out of the way so you don't end up trapping one with a strut. Believe me, I speak from experience. So that's the process. I'd be interested in any opinions about model casting or flat wire, and if the model cast and flexible line, should I take the hole all the way through on the top? I'm definitely going to take it through all the way on the bottom because that's just going to be a much easier way to thread that through, give it a little tension, and then drop a little bit of CA glue into the hole. As far as the tools I used, This is either a 1.75 or a 1.8 millimeter diameter drill bit for the pin vise here. I use that to clean out the struts, the holes for the struts, wing struts, and the supports for the nacelles. I used a 1 millimeter pin vise to create the holes for where the rigging line will go. And then I finished them and went in a little bit deeper and cleaned out the gunk from the decal with a 0.7 millimeter. So that's the next step. And I'll wait to see what sort of feedback I get before I make up my determination about what rigging material to use, and if I use the flexible line, take it through all the way or attach it to the underside without punching through to the top surface of the wing. The bottom wing will get a similar treatment, as I said, but in that case, I will definitely be punching the hole all the way through the wing if I use model casting. Okay, some pictures to follow at the end. Okay, if you've been following this series, you'll know that what I did with the wings for the Gotha bomber was, after priming them and then coating them with clear gloss, I applied aftermarket decals from Adriatic. They're just really, really superb. And while they were made for a different kit, I was able to make them work, and applied them, let them dry, and then did a flat clear varnish over them. But the first step was to basically then go in and, I'll just say, punch out, or using a pin vise actually, make sure that I had cleaned out all of the contact points, holes, openings. This is the underside of one of the top wings for the struts, and then over here for the struts that basically hold the engine. The nacelle is below this. Of course, this is upside down. So you've got 3 sets of pure wing struts, and then you've got this pair of struts that basically also support the engine and the nacelle. So basically I went in with a pin vise, and I had to make sure I broke through the surface of the quite flexible, stretchy decal, and then clean it out, put in those holes. The holes are there, but make sure that I had the decal film removed from on top of them. Then, after make sure I cleaned them out as best I could, I gave the wing another shot of Tamiya flat clear spray, basically just to seal everything around those holes. Now, why all this time on talking about the contact points for the struts? Well, that's because the vast majority of lines, contact points that I'll be drilling, regardless of whether I use model cast-in flexible line or the SBS flat wire, are adjacent to and paired up and go along and are located next to each of those struts, contact points. So I've got to put them in here and here and here, here, here. And the only thing that I have to decide if I commit to model casting would be that I would be drilling the hole all the way through the wing. More about that later if I go that route. If I decide if I were using just the flat wire, the contact points go in the same point, but I would just put them in maybe about, I don't know, an itty bit deep, enough to basically provide the necessary tension so it'll hold the end. Okay, so the next step will be drilling all of those holes, and when I say that, partially drilling, because if I want to go with the model casting line, I'll just finish it up and take the hole and then drill it all the way through. More to come.